The lights are off and away they go.
Extremely loose. He's managed to hold on.
He missed the complete. That is crazy stuff.
Side Freitas is on the grass on the infield floor. He slides through. He tags Richard Eck.
After a whole year of some of the most challenging races the world over, Northwest Majors culminates at perhaps the most difficult circuit in all of iRacing. Sometimes simply referred to as the Mountain, Bathurst has broken hearts and made legends. Today it will crown our champion as we get ready to watch the final round of the Northwest Majors live on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak. With me in the booth tonight is our resident Aussie, Richard Losberg, and our Brit-turned-Patriot, Samuel Ryman. Our cameras have been provided by Dougie Beard and are directed by Kevin Brown. Richard, I know you've actually driven on these roads in real life, so why don't you do the honors of telling our viewers about the track?
Thank you, Joe. Hi, viewers. Hi, Samuel. Yeah, this is, Joe, this is one of my absolute favorite tracks in the whole world of racing. And not for the reasons that it is in Australia. It's a 4-mile track, 6.213 kilometers. And on non-race days, this is actually a public road and cars can drive along it in both directions. At a speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour, may I say. That's about 37 miles an hour. The vertical difference, just to prove that it is a mountain, the vertical difference between the lowest and the highest points is 174 meters or 570 feet. Imagine falling off that. And the gradients are as steep as 1 in 6. This track has 23 turns. And really, Joe, you can have a look at this track in 3 sections. You've got pit straight and then that 90-degree turn called Hell Corner. And that goes up the long, very steep mountain straight. So that's the first section. Then you've got the tight, narrow section across the top of the mountain itself. And then finally the long downhill section of Conrod Straight with a very fast chase and the turn back onto pit road. In real life, yesterday, the lap records were broken multiple times. They were doing 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Love to see how these guys compare. Back to you, Joe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when qualifying wraps up, which we're watching right now, who winds up on the pole and what kind of time they're running. However, as we wait for them to finish that up, let's hop on board one of these Ford Falcons and see what it's like from the roll bar of these things. It is a wild ride. All right, we've got Kevin Brown behind the wheel of the GSRC Ford Falcon, so let's do a lap around Bathurst. Coming down the front stretch, first up is Hell Corner. You can try passes into here, but it's probably better to wait until after. That's because right off the bat, you've got this critical 90-degree left-hander. If you get a bad exit out of here, you're going to lose speed all the way up the mountain straight. However, if you need a chance to relax, take it now, because you won't get it for a long time once we start climbing the hill. Now we hop the crest, and then right away you're braking for Griffin's Bend, which is only turn 2 in this 23-turn track. This corner is deceptively fast, but it's off camber, so it's easy to push wide into the outside wall on the exit. Now you start to get a feel for the rise in elevation as we head for the cutting. Tricky braking with this little kink, and then the car climbs up the astonishingly steep left-hander. Now we start to veer back right around Quarry, which requires incredible precision and really punishes mistakes. Same thing when we hit the top of the hill at Frog Hollow. You've got a series of really fast left-hand bends here with 0 runoff, so push the limits at your discretion. It all culminates at McPhillamy Park with this super blind entry and a sand trap that does little to slow the car if you find yourself drifting wide. Immediately you've got to switch left and set up for Skyline. You're chucking the car into the S's on the faith that you can get it slowed in time for the dipper. This drop is really going to rotate the car, so be wary of how soon you get on the gas. After some more S's, you'll stay as far right as you can through turn 17 to set up for the painfully tough Forest Elbow. Curved braking zone, a patience-trying late apex, no runoff, and you're dumped onto the longest straight of the whole track. This is, of course, the Conrod Straight. You're going to go on a roller coaster ride of plunging all the way down the mountain, compressing, and then coming back up over the crest. By this time, you're approaching the Chase, which is the fastest right-hand corner in all of Australian racing. You'll hit around 180 miles an hour, just lift a little, then throw out the anchor for the chicane. This is much trickier than you'd expect. The combo of hitting your braking point accurately and coming up over a blind rise on exit makes it difficult to nail. Now we head for Murray's Corner. This is a good place to try to get a pass in, but it's also pretty deceptive for a 90-degree turn. The high curb means it can unsettle the car and send you spinning into the pit wall. But if you survive the whole way, you finished a lap around Mount Panorama. As you can see, this is going to be a real challenge for these drivers throughout the 100 minutes that they are going to be driving around here. Now, this is the final round, and even though the overall championship is up for grabs, it seems pretty much settled, Sam.
Yes, it does, and that's mainly given that Toby Butler, who's currently sits second in the points and has been leading for most of the championship, is not here today, so Brian Barnes will likely win this championship, currently leading it by 14 points over Toby Butler. Joshua Gardiner, third in the points, but he is not here today. So, who will finish third in the points? Will it be either Carl Burke or Stephen Paulison? Because both of them are here, both of them are less than 7 points behind Joshua Gardiner, and both of them are in the top 10 in qualifying right now. So third place in the points, definitely a three-way fight right now, whereas it looks like Brian Barnes has locked up the championship.
Now, interestingly, I do see that Josh Gardner is showing that he's here. Now, I don't believe he's actually put a lap in on qualifying. Now he has, actually. He is well down the order. Now, here's the interesting thing about Josh. He is actually in the Road Championship. This series runs both road and oval courses, and they have separate championships for each, as well as the overall. And with this being the last road round, that is up for grabs between Brian Barnes and Josh Gardner. There's only 3 points between them in the road championship. If Josh can have a good day today and his qualifying is not making that look likely, then he can actually win this road championship. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. We still have about 2 or 3 minutes left in qualifying, it looks like. And so things are pretty close to how they're going to solidify on the qualifying, and it is a standing start, but I think we're going to have time to get through that before we go green. A few of the things to talk about: the pit entry. Now, with it being 100 minutes, I believe we should see at least one pit stop, if I'm not mistaken. And Richard, this pit entry, if they have not practiced it, I think that's going to cause some trouble for them.
Oh, indeed. The entry has a chicane in it, you know, just on approach. So coming off the track itself, it's pretty straightforward, but then it kind of snakes to the left and right before actually entering the pit area itself. So it is tricky. And we saw yesterday in the real life race that a couple of guys actually came together on that approach, racing into the pit. So it's not an easy pit entry.
Definitely not. So I expect to see a few drivers caught out as the day progresses. Another thing to watch out for, Sam, is I feel like a number of these guys, sort of like what we saw in Petit Le Mans, are just going to be looking to finish today. That in itself can be an accomplishment.
Richard says he likes this track, and I do too. As a spectator, like it. As a guy who likes to see a challenging race, I like it on single hot laps. As far as the race goes, though, as much as I think we're going to enjoy today, I'm not the biggest fan behind the wheel here, because you're pretty much just racing to keep it on the track, and then granted you also have the hardest car to drive on the surface. However, that given, this is a 100-minute race, which was relatively short for the Northwest Majors series, and we have a 21 car field, so I feel even if we do see a bit of attrition today, we're still going to have some great racing out there on the circuit.
And just to prove the point that we were talking about earlier, we're watching the replay of Christopher Sherburne having a bit of difficulty trying to enter the pit lane there himself. So Sherburne obviously learning his lesson before the race even gets started. We've got just 30 seconds left to go, and then the drivers are locked into their starting positions. And right now it's looking very good for Corey Peters, sitting on a provisional pole. In fact, the only car right now who is in the 207s, impressively, and by over half a second that he is ahead of our second place driver right now. So he is looking very handy out there on the course. Now, when we usually talk about trouble zones here, Richard, I kind of would count the entire top of the mountain as a trouble zone here.
Joe, that's quite correct. The only possible area to try a pass will be along Skyline before you start heading down the mountain. But even that is risky. Heading down the mountain, it's nobody should attempt to pass along that area. It's just too risky. And really, the only passing zones are going up the mountain and coming down the mountain, as you would expect. You know, they're long straightaways.
Well, qualifying has wrapped up. The cars are lining up on the grid, so let's go through our grid very quickly here. Corey Peters, as we said, on pole with a 2:07.9. Matthew Rogers rounds out the front row with Christopher Sherburne in third. William Fletcher starts fourth, followed by Brian Barnes in fifth. Aaron Stowe in sixth, and Stephen Paulison in seventh. Paul Geringer begins the race in eighth with Kyle Murphy in ninth, and rounding out the top 10, Sam, is Carl Burke.
In 11th place is Drew Lalonde, 12th is Wayne Hutchinson, 13th is Ray Nelson, and then 14th is Brian Burnett. Chris Beck will start 15th alongside him, John Richard in 16th, Jared Morgan and Mike Willett, the league organizer, starting on the 9th row of the grid. David Freeboff and Gary Nichols round out the top 20. And then Joshua Gardner's 21st, and I guess he'll be starting from the back, but was off the pace in qualifying. And Sean Breesman and Matthew Sabowski are listed on the entry list, but did not turn a lap in qualifying.
And they are not showing up on the grid right now, so I think they are going to be did not starts as we are getting ever closer to those lights coming up. We're waiting for those to go. This is, as you can see, is a standing start, which is going to be even more tricky for guys who are not familiar with this car. Practice time is definitely going to be valued for every one of these drivers, not only for this track, but for this car itself, which is known for being very difficult to pick up on. So as the cars sit rumbling on that famous start straight, the lights have now come up, and Corey Peters does not seem to have taken his position on the grid. Waiting for the green. There it is right there. Green flag is out. Cars take off. And Christopher Sherburne got a phenomenal start. In fact, he is already in the lead before we get to the first corner. And he is going to start off right away with the lead there. A number of other cars filing through. We got three wide a little bit farther back, but everybody seems to manage to get through without any contact, Sam.
Yeah, we did have a bit of three wide there. Jared Morgan starting from the pits, but yeah, you're right. I do not see Corey Peters, and Christopher Sherburne certainly took advantage. We got a good start from third on the grid. Didn't have anyone in front of him. Went right into the lead. A bit of a bad start by Matthew Rogers, but he started second. Is still in second, so I'm pretty sure he's happy with that. There's still 100 minutes to go. Got one car out there almost in the wall. Drew Lalonde, who started 11th, has been dropping like a brick, and we've only completed 2 turns.
Indeed. In fact, other cars are already many more turns ahead, up to Frog Hollow already for Christopher Sherburne as we head up the mountain for the very first time. Now up towards the top, heading towards McPhillamy Park here. Very, very difficult left-hander, very little runoff. And now we head towards the Dipper, Richard.
Yes, sir. And this is where things get really interesting. First lap, tires are cold. Guys who are going to be trying perhaps to get too much speed out of the car may come a cropper, but I see I'm looking from right at the back. Everybody is negotiating the mountain for the first time very, very carefully. Back to you, Joe.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's taking the wise move on this first lap, and that's just kind of taking it easy, knowing that there's no use in pushing early in a 100-minute race. So as now they head down Conrad Straight, we're hitting the chase for the very first time. Excuse me, as Christopher Sherburne hits the brakes and leads the pack. In fact, he's already starting to gap the field. So it's not only that he had a good start, but he seems to have excellent pace out there, Sam.
He does, and maybe pit stops will be his Achilles heel given what we saw in qualifying, but here they come around the final corner right now. Murray's corner, I believe that is called. Lap 1 completed. Christopher Sherburne in the lead. Matthew Rogers in second position. Aaron Stowe started 6th. He is already up to 3rd. He's got a big gap before 4th place William Fletcher.
And it looks like Mike Willett had a little bit of contact with someone coming through the chase, and Drew Lalonde, once again, a car with troubles, had an off track completely at the chase. Otherwise, I didn't see much in the way of trouble for other drivers throughout the time. We're looking at Mike right now, and it looks like he has scored in 17th, so he lost a number of positions, and he's trying to chase down 2 cars that are battling quite closely. That's Sean Breetzman and David Freebach.
Side by side into the second corner here. You can really only go through this section single file, so one of them's going to have to back off, and it will be David, although Sean gets on the grass a little bit and almost loses it heading into the turn, but able to hold on to it. And actually, he has several car lengths over David Freebach now, who has Mike Willett behind him, but obviously Mike won't be able to do anything through this portion of the circuit.
Starting to get into that technical uphill section. Freebach looking a little slow as Willett starts to close ground, and just behind them, Lalonde. Remember, he had trouble on that first lap. I'm wondering if his pace is a little bit better than he was doing on those cold tires. Maybe things have warmed up at this point, as you mentioned, Richard. But he's slowly closing in on Willett, and Drew began the race in 11th, so he's dropped 7 positions already.
Yes, indeed. Just looking at Drew Lalonde now, he's negotiating the mountain, just going through Skyline, hitting down. This is deceptive. It looks easier than what it really is. And then that last section going through the dipper there, it's actually easier than what it looks. So the mountain has a lot of surprises for a driver. You need to do a lot of laps here, Joe, to keep practicing, to know how to negotiate this track. And with this car, I have to openly admit I am absolutely useless in this car. It's all about throttle control and also brake control. So that's off to these guys for just keeping it on the track.
Just ahead, we missed a little battle between Ray Nelson and Josh Gardner, as Gardner was able to get by him. Right now we're looking at Paul Geringer, and that is currently a 7th place car on track, just trying to hunt down Stephen Paulison for that 6th position as they head up the mountain straight. Looks like he didn't quite get enough a good enough exit out of Hell Corner, did Paul Geringer, and he's losing ground now as they come over the crest and start to break for Griffin's Bend. Just ahead of them, though, we've got a little bit of a battle between Brian Barnes and William Fletcher. Remember, Barnes is fighting for that road championship, Sam.
Yeah, and so it's Joshua Gardner who did make a start of the race despite not really performing in qualifying. We have 20 cars currently in the race, and the 23 that qualified, the 3 that did not start, while Polsa to Bobby Peters, last place qualifier Matthew Sabowski, and one of the drivers in the middle who was meant to start 16th was John Richard. Those 3 did not start. But I'll tell you what, we got a bit of a battle forming for the lead. It looks like this lap, Matthew Rogers has actually closed in on Christopher Sherburne a bit. Now, as I say that, and they actually begin to spread out a little bit, but Matthew's certainly not letting Christopher run away with it.
Yeah, despite his early signs of pace, it seems that Rogers has started to reel him in as he gets a little squirrely coming out around Forrest's elbow there, but he gathers it together. Definitely not a place, Richard, where you want the tail end to get too far out.
Oh, no, sir. Christopher Sherburne has started well. He did a 2:10 on his last lap, 2:10.6, but Matthew Rogers has gone 3/10 better than that on lap number 2. So, yes, he is starting to reel him in, but it's a long race yet. Maybe Sherburne is just being extra careful in the beginning stages here, Joe.
Yeah, not exactly an unwise choice. I don't blame him if he wants to just kind of get into his rhythm. Meanwhile, looking at Paul Geringer, who's still battling with Paulison, who's stretched away a little bit. I know earlier in the lap he had closed in, but just behind them, we've got Kyle Murphy in that yellow and red V8 supercar, just closing in on the back of Geringer, starting to put him under a little bit of pressure himself. And in fact, not very far back is Carl Burke as well, sitting in 9th in the black and white machine. So those guys all starting to get a train of 4 cars. In fact, very good exit for Burke. Now, as we can see down this very long mountain straight, going to try and reel him in. We're hopping on board with Burke. Sam, see if he can do anything up towards Griffin Bend.
I think it's a little bit too far back now, but let's continue your little pack rundown here, Joe. Right behind them is Joshua Gardner, who I've alluded to a few times. I really thought he would get bit slower considering how he qualified, but he is actually a second a lap quicker than this pack and running them down. If he can break into the top 10, he may be able to hold on to his third place in the points over. Oh, and into the wall goes Kyle Albert. That's going to make Gardner's job a bit easier.
Absolutely, although I wouldn't want to try and get by a limping car as we look at the replay. This was heading up Quarry. Looks like that tail end just started to get away from him and smacked it into the wall. There goes.
Guys, that is very unfortunate. He was catching the car in front of him, which was indeed Carl Murphy. But that touch of the wall is not going to help him a heck of a lot. He'll be limping around for a little while. But guys, up forward in fourth place, William Fletcher is definitely catching Aaron Stowe in third place, and I foresee a battle developing here quite soon.
Yeah, it looks like he's begun to just reel him in ever bit by bit. Fletcher and that white, green, and red Castrol machine just pulling in Stowe, and that blue Ford Falcon just ahead of him as they head through the chase. And wow, he gained a ton of time through that chicane, now heading towards Murray's corner, the final corner on the track. This is, you talk about deceptive, Richard. This corner in just about every car feels like it should be so much simpler, but it's very tricky to nail just right, especially if you're on a hot lap and you don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, Murray's corner as well as Hell corner, which is turn 1, they're both exactly 90 degrees. So you've got that full, parabolic section to get around. It's, 90 degrees that you've got to negotiate. So in any car, that's tough. You treat it with disrespect, it will catch you out.
And Sam, it sounds like you have some information on Burke after his damage.
Yeah, he's just came down into the pits, which was to be expected. Obviously, even the slightest bit of damage at a track as fast and as narrow as here, you're going to want that repaired. Now, the Northwest Matrix does offer you 2 free repairs, so he should be able to get one of those and get back out there quickly.
However, he does have an hour and 30 minutes, 90 whole minutes to try and survive without damaging his car yet again. Meanwhile, Aaron Stowe has a mirror full of William Fletcher trying to get in that podium spot, and just behind them, Brian Barnes is also caught up to this train, now heading towards the Dipper, so really no passing opportunities here unless someone makes a big error. So they're just single file heading through the S's down towards Forest Bend. Gonna want to focus, Richard, on the best exit possible out of there.
Correct, and we sounds like we're on board with Brian Barnes.
Oh, we got a big crash.
Go ahead,
Oh, Carl Murphy crashed, and then Sean Batesman just plowed into him. And this is in the mountain section, so the field coming through are going to have to slow down. Chris Beck gets through it cleanly enough, but I think Sean Batesman needs to take a tow. He's kind of just sitting there waiting for the field to clear out, but that car's got a lot of damage. I think he needs to tow that.
And
yes, he's facing the wrong way as well there, Samuel. He's reversing now. What is he doing? Good grief.
And we're trying to find a replay of that. Kyle Murphy had messed it up. Oh, I think it's plowed into by Sean Breetzman. That was up. Now we're seeing it in McPhillamy Park. Just as we're watching that replay of plowing, T-boning, in fact, into the side of Breetzman. Looks like we're going to take one more look at it. That corner, Richard, is just so blind. You do not want your car anywhere towards the line or anywhere on the track in there.
Yeah, I see what he was trying to do. Very good thinking on his part. He wanted to get the car into a safe area before he tried to turn it around and try and make his way back to the pits. I'm with Samuel. He should have taken the tow. He'd probably be halfway to the pits by now.
Well, right now, Breetzman, as we look at the replay one more time, has a heavy smoking car heading back towards the pits, so it looks like he's going to be able to get there under his own power, but we're watching now what led Kyle Murphy into that position. Just caught a little bit too much curb, and the tail went around off through the sand trap into the wall. Unfortunately, could not find himself a good space like Sean did to get turned around, wound up getting T-boned. So, as we watch William Fletcher, who himself is in quite a battle still for that third position, with Aaron Stowe just ahead of him, and they are heading. Oh, and Stowe completely misses the S's down towards the Dipper. He's going to have a slowdown penalty. He loses 2 spots right away.
Yes, sir. And in fact, that might have been a little pressure, or he might have been watching his mirrors too much. Certainly, there was a 3-way battle. Now it's becoming 2-way battle with Barnes and Fletcher. Barnes has quietly been just sitting behind the two, waiting for perhaps an opportunity. Now, as they go down Conrad Straight, we see that Fletcher has quite a turn of speed down here. So can Brian Barnes catch him and let a battle open? We shall see.
Reedsman has made it back to the pits, guys, but I want to mention that I've seen a lot of cars sliding around now. Actually, Joshua Gardner had about a half spin a lap ago, but I don't know if... I can't imagine these cars are beginning to wear yet, but we're seeing a lot of cars sliding around, maybe losing a bit of focus, Joe.
And for some reason, we had William Fletcher slow down quite a bit and actually allow Brian Barnes by. So Barnes moves himself in just about the space of a lap from 5th to 3rd. Not exactly sure what happened to Fletcher there. We'll have to see if we can send someone to try and figure out what went on with him, because I don't think he cut the course anywhere.
No, he did not, Joe. He just slowed the car down. He saw that indeed Brian Barnes was determined to try an overtaking maneuver, and he let him have the corner and slowed down more perhaps than he should have. But he's taking safety first, and now he can follow Brian around and see what he's doing. 90 minutes of racing, you know, that's a long time. He's just playing cautious.
This is going to help Barnes, who is fighting for that road championship. Right now, his main competitor, Gardner, still in 8th position and slowly working his way up through. So he has a ways to go to try and run down. He only needs to score 4 more points than Barnes to try and take that championship away from him. As we sit on board with Fletcher, who has seen a Brian Barnes, the blue car of Brian Barnes, just become a smaller and smaller speck up ahead of that windshield.
And not too far, sorry Richard, not too far up ahead of them is Gary Nichols' lap car, and not too far in front of the lead pack is Carl Murphy, the lap car. The lap traffic already beginning to become a factor. We're not going to see any safety cars during this race, so lap traffic will be a factor all race long, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. Richard?
Yes, sir. I was about to say that we have 2 kind of battles going on. We've got the places 1 and 2, Christopher Sherburn, Matthew Rogers. They're not that far from each other. Rogers is about 1.8 seconds back last time by. It looks as if it's a bit closer now. And then, of course, we've got Barnes and Fletcher also quite close. I must say, Joe, I'm quite surprised that these guys aren't racing a bit closer to each other. In the real life series, they nose to tail pretty much for, you know, a freight train of 10 cars. These guys are super cautious, must be.
Yeah, we have to remember that probably most of these guys are not regulars in this car, and it's difficult enough even if you drive this car all the time. So I'm not surprised to see everybody just kind of give each other space. They're not they're not looking to be one of the V8 Supercar regulars quite yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if a few of them maybe decide they fancy it, since some, like Sherburn and Rogers, are doing pretty well at taking it up. So now as they head up through Quarry, Sherburn has gotten by Murphy, and now it's up to Rogers to try and work his way past, although going through on the mountain is not the best way to do it. He'll have to have some help somewhere along the line, I'm sure, try and work his way past that yellow and red lapped car. Now heading down towards the Dipper. So we have an hour and 20 minutes to go, and right now our top 5 still sits at Sherburn in 1st, Rogers in 2nd, Brian Barnes, championship leader, in 3rd, William Fletcher is in 4th, and Aaron Stowe, after a mistake, has fallen down to 5th.
And I know a couple of guys in the pits there. Mike Willett is in his pit stall, and there was someone else that was in the pits who's come back out on track. So some early pit stops happening as well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Joshua Gardner had damage. He had crashed in the mountain the lap before, and he had came in to get repairs. I don't exactly know what happened to Mike Willett. David Freepots also has damage now. He just put his car in the wall up in the mountain section. Not a whole lot of damage, but we'll see if he comes into the pits to repair that.
Well, we just watched the replay on Willett, and it looks like it was heading into Frog Hollow. Just banged the left side wall just slightly. It must have upset maybe the handling that he felt it was worth heading in for a pit stop. So that green machine, apparently we're getting information that all four corners are not good
Oh,
on that
change
car.
for the lead! And a mistake by Christopher Sherburn. Into the lead goes Matthew Rogers.
And that was in turn one. We're going to look at the replay coming into Hell Corner. Rear just comes around here. We're looking at it now. And yeah, rear just starts to slide out. That is a good catch there, Sam.
Yeah, what were you saying earlier about those two corners, those two 90-degree corners, Joe? It's exactly what happened. Treat it with a little bit of disrespect and you will pay the price. And we've got now between the two cars, Matthew Rogers in the lead and Christopher Sherburn. We've got a lap car in Carl Murphy, who seems to be doing a pretty good job of staying with the guys now that he's in between them, even though he's a lap down. So not quite sure why he went a lap down, because he looks quite useful in that car there, Joe.
I believe Murphy was one of the ones that had trouble on lap one or early in the race. We're getting some info. Sounds like he was part of the big wreck that was with Sean Brightsman, if we remember earlier on, that he had just slid out coming through McPhillamy Park. That's what set Kyle Murphy back. So, and he, even though he scored, yes, he is a lap down actually. So he's got a little bit of time to make up, unfortunately, after that mistake. In fact, we only have 3 cars lapped down. Sean Brightsman, the other one who was involved in that incident. Gary Nichols, who's been having a slow start. In fact, he qualified second to last of the guys who put times in. And then Kyle Murphy is the only other one that we have that is a lap down. Everybody else is still within the lap of the leader of not Christopher Sherburn, Matthew Rogers, who's coming around right now to lead his first lap of this race.
Yeah, good job by Matthew Rogers. He was stalking Christopher Sherburn for quite some time. In fact, we are on lap 10 at 2 minutes 10 seconds or so around here. He was sitting behind him for about 25 minutes, and suddenly a mistake, small mistake, and he has the lead position. Now Christopher Sherburn has it all to do to catch back up to him. He's already 2.7 seconds back, so Matthew has not hung around after taking the lead there, Joe.
You know, Sam, I heard a really good quote from a driver the other day that it's not how fast you can drive, it's how long you can drive fast. And I think that's very much the case in these V8 supercars.
Yeah, Sean Brightsman currently sitting in last right now. He has a bit more damage to his car. I was watching him throughout the whole mountain section. He about wrecked every single turn, but I guess it's normal with these V8 supercars. You've got so much power on those rear wheels, you are just about wrecking every single corner. Anyhow, Christopher Sherburn has got by the lap car. We'll see if he can begin to make an impression on Matthew Rogers. And I'll tell you what, Christopher was fast quickly early on, putting on 209s while everyone else was in the 210s. But then Matthew Rogers picked it up and began to join him. So, like I say, he certainly has the pace to match him. And we have been seeing a couple more cars without any damage coming to the pits. I don't know if they're planning on short pitting, if this is a 2-stop race. I really don't know what the fuel mileage numbers are on these cars. But right now, it's business as usual up front. Matthew Rogers leads Christopher Sherburn.
We're hearing actually that a stint is about 15 or 16 laps for these cars. And right now, our leaders are on lap 10, so they're getting close to the end of their stint, their first stint here, as they work their way through. As we said, about 2-minute 8 laps, 2-minute 9 laps is the regular pace that we're going to see for most of these guys. At least it wasn't qualifying. Race pace could be a whole different story, of course. We're looking at Christopher Sherburn in second after having gotten past the lapped car of Kyle Murphy. But we've switched the battle between Paulison and Geringer, which has been going on for most of the race. They're heading into the chase right now. Paulison just ahead in the black and white machine, followed by Geringer in that green and blue Falcon, and he's not close enough to make anything happen right now, Sam. But these two are certainly giving each other something exciting to worry about.
Yeah, they are, but maybe they just want to stay single file, at least for the first half of this race, and just log off laps. Meanwhile, I'm seeing a damaged car coming out onto the long back straight. It's Gary Nichols, who's already a lap down. His car is not going in the straight direction very easily, but it looks like the field will get around him okay. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on these guys because they're certainly close to each other on course, but they still have a long time to go before the checkered flag falls.
Nichols is certainly carrying a lot of speed for a car that's crabbing that badly as he hits down Conrad straight, and the car is not straight as he hits the chase now, and somehow I'm amazed that he is able to drive that car well enough the way it's going sideways. So, as you said, hopefully going to get that car repaired, that very white and unpainted machine, unfortunately. Down into the pits, and it looks like there he goes, just barely makes it past the bollards and into the chicane that leads into the pits as we switch back to Geringer. And where is he in regards to Paulson? Looks like he is still just about that same amount of gap, trying to hunt him down, seeing if he can get a mistake out of that machine. Oh, and he just might have, as it looks like Paulson might have cut the course slightly, heading through the S's.
Well, guys, while you're watching that situation develop there, I've been watching Fletcher and Barnes play this game of cat and mouse. Now, William Fletcher in car number 28, fourth position, been sitting behind Barnes, closes right up coming through the chase there, as you will see, and then the lead stretches out again as they go up to up the mountain through the first part of the course. It's not a battle at this point in time, but it is interesting to watch the different styles of these two drivers, and they both equal at this point in time. So I predict a battle will develop here at some point.
And right in front of them, there's a battle for 17th as Kyle Murphy has caught David Ebos. Remember, Kyle Murphy had that crash earlier on in the race, and as Richard alluded to earlier, that's a lot of pace. But meanwhile, they're going to have to put their battle on hold, I have a feeling here, because Brian Barnes is right behind him. Oh, no, they're going for it. Here goes Kyle Murphy down the inside. Going to work? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Maybe it is. But Brian Barnes is hating these two drivers right now, because this is going to give William Fletcher a chance to catch up.
Oh, and Freebot tries to pull the inside
of
the cutting.
This is not going to work. Already there was some contact there, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say the cutting's not where you want to go too wide. Oh, and Freebot fins it.
An accident. Hit the wall.
Freebot
all the
spins
rest
it,
get
coming through quarry, yeah. And miraculously, good heads on everybody who were around as we watched the replay. A little bit of contact up into the cutting. I don't know if that damaged Freebot's steering, but then up into quarry, suddenly rear comes out and he just hits both walls, and wow, very close for the blue car of Brian Barnes, but manages to sneak by. We're getting word that Rogers almost lost it.
Battle for the lead. They make contact. Mr. Sherburne goes into lead with contact by Matthew Rogers. Matthew Rogers got wheel spin out of a previous turn. That could have been huge.
And we watched the replay. Richard, you said you didn't think these cars were driving close enough. Well, got your wish.
Oh, it's good to see. It's good to see. I just want to make a comment on that earlier incident there. Kyle Murphy, that was brave or really silly. I can't make up my mind which.
Well, he made it work whichever, and I don't blame him for pushing. He's trying to make up time, and Freeboth is a much slower car. And, you know, that's just something where I think it depends on the driver that you're racing, Richard. You know, some drivers like me, if they know a very fast car is coming up, it's early in the race, you just give way. There's no point in fighting them because you're going to hold up both of you, and you're not going to win in the end, most likely. Freeboth, I guess, decides every point's worth it, and we're looking at a spin by Carl Burke, who is going to lose another point right there, and, no, excuse me, Burke was going by. That was that Murphy spinning?
No, Joshua Gardner. Joshua Gardner.
That was indeed Gardner, and the yellow and red machine gathered it together, and Burke got on the radio and told him, nice save, and I think that's my sentiments as well, Sam.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, Gardner, if I remember correctly, correctly, had a pit stop earlier, the repair for damage. These battles are going on about 40 seconds back of the lead pack, so that would make sense. But even then, they're racing for about 10th. And I've seen a lot of cars doing that, what Gardner just did. A lot of cars have been driving on the grass, not that much as Carl Berg goes all 4 wheels on the grass and overshoots the turn. And thankfully, there's no wall there. He's just going to get a lot of dirt on that car, turn it into a lawnmower for a temporary period of time. So that was a bit of excitement. And right in front of him, Drew Lalonde is going into the pits. So I guess we got green flag starting.
We're going to watch that replay of Carl Berg as he mows through the chase. And then on the other side of the chase.
Joe, just before that, just in front of Carl Berg, was an accident coming out of Murray's with some car. Let me just check who that was. Freebot,
Sean
was it?
Briesman.
Briesman it was.
We're going back to see if we could see a replay of it. Now heading into Murray's corner. Just takes too much of that curb. I've done that so many times. Spins it around. He keeps it out of everybody. And the question is, can he get it turned around without anybody else hitting him? That seems to have been a problem of a few drivers. Yep, does a nice little 180 and gets the car going.
Yeah, Jared Morgan just lost a couple of spots there, or okay, only one of them was a spot to Mike Willett. I have a feeling he damaged his car a little bit ago. Jared Morgan has been struggling recently while Matthew Rogers works his way by them. Meanwhile, since Sherburne has retaken the lead, probably due to the lap traffic, he has already pulled out 6 seconds on Matthew Rogers. So I don't quite know the full story behind that. But they were battling for the lead a couple of laps ago, and now there's 6 seconds between them.
As we watch Wayne Hutchinson and Brian Bennett battle it out. Now, I have to wonder, Sam, honestly, if there was any damage that Matthew had gotten from that contact, and maybe that's why he's been slowed down.
Maybe, but with all these drivers short pitting the way they are, that might be the indication to Matthew, hey, into the pits, get it repaired. Maybe he didn't do any fuel mileage calculations in practice, so, and he's just going to run the tank till it goes dry.
Well, we're on lap 13 right now, and Hutchinson and the Pepsi V8 supercar trying to hunt down Bennett, still up on the top of the mountain, now heading down the hill. And he's nowhere near that he's going to be able to get anything unless there's a big mistake by Bennett through Forrest Elbow at this point. And they both are cleanly through, although neither of them seems to give the apex any bother at all, and work their way down the hill. We've switched to Paul Geringer, however, and he has been in a battle for quite a while that we keep touching on and doesn't ever quite seem to make anything happen with it, Richard, but he's a lot closer now as he's trying to see if he can do something against Steve Paulison.
Yes, as they come across Skyline, he's very, very close now. They break for the heading down, and they go through the park section and now into the S's and into the dipper. Coming out through that S section once again, they will be going down Conrad Straight through Forest Elbow right now. Let's see if he can do something. There is a car in front of Stephen Paulison as well, which is Gary Nichols. He's way down. So let's see what happens. Paul Garrington now very much on the throttle, and he'll have the draft. Not quite sure how these cars draft Joe, but certainly if there is any draft, he's in it. And let's see how he closes up on the approach to the chase, coming through the chase now.
Well, Geringer completely missed the apex coming into the chase. They're not close enough to really try and lap Nichols yet.
In fact, Geringer had to brake hard to avoid hitting Paulison right there, and they both go into the pits.
So both of them deciding now is the time on lap 14. Remember, we said they can get about 15 or 16 laps on a tank, and I think they both have stretched it to the end, and this is going to allow the car that they were trailing, Nichols, to head on unperturbed and just run his laps by his lonesome. We haven't checked or at least informed you on our top 5 in a while, so just a heads up, Sherburne is still leading. Rogers continues to lose that gap down to 6 seconds between himself and Sherburne. Rogers in second place. Brian Barnes is currently sitting in third, and Aaron Stowe in fourth. And William Fletcher, who is now in the pits, is rounding out our top 5.
Yes, we've got quite a few. We've got Carl Murphy back in the pits as well. Jared Morgan's in his pit stall. Stephen Paulison. as they start to come out now for their second stint. I want to do some math here because 14 laps, obviously that is what they can get out of the car, but that's not anywhere close to what they do in real life. So I'm going to do a little bit of math and try and figure out what's going on here.
We're getting some information from our resident V8 expert that the right at Conrad in regards to the draft is actually quite difficult. Apparently the cars get a huge aero push when they're trailing behind someone closely. So the car can get a little bit light and you can lock the brakes. So sounds like Sam Barnes has actually been starting to catch up to our second place driver.
Yeah, well, it's been something that's been going on for a few laps, really, ever since Rogers lost the lead and got that damage. He is about 1 or 2 seconds a lap slower than the other drivers who have all yet to make a pit stop at the front here, being led by Christopher Sherburne, completing lap 15 right now. Matthew Rogers stays out and Barnes comes into the pits. But yeah, I guess Barnes has just really taken care of his car, really taken care of his tyres, and he was closing in on Rogers for second there. And remember, Barnes has pretty much locked up the championship here, so he's probably just racing for the win.
Well, right now, with the way that Rogers is losing ground on Sherburne and he wasn't before, and now losing ground to Barnes, I really have a feeling that Rogers' car was slightly messed up by that contact coming down Conrad straight. Whatever the case, he's certainly not doing himself any favors by continuing on instead of pitting and getting that car repaired. And maybe he knows something we do as we watch him head back up the hill. So as he continues to trail Sherburne by about 8 seconds, we have an hour and 6 minutes to go. So we're getting close to the halfway point pretty soon here in these cars, with about I guess 16 more minutes till we hit halfway in this 100-minute race. So, excuse me.
I was gonna say. Your math is kind of weird. I mean, 100 minutes is the race, 50 minutes is halfway. We still got 65 minutes to go.
Yeah, I was slightly off there. I was thinking in filmmaker terms there. So, anyways, we've switched to Paul Geringer sitting in 9th, who's not been doing too bad, and he is trying to chase down Carl Burke. In fact, he must have lost that position to Carl Burke somewhere along the lap, because right now the timing and scoring just updated, I believe. In fact, he's given Carl Burke quite a hassle as they head up onto the mountain straight. Not a lot of room, but he loses the gap with a bad exit coming out of Hell Corner as Carl Burke starts to stretch away in the black and white machine, Sam.
And in front of them is Aaron Stowe running in 4th place, who just made his pit stop. Amazing that the top 4 can all make their pits and get out. Still running in top 4, and there goes the battle for 5th, right, as I begin talking about something else. Paul Geringer goes by Carl Burke really cleanly as they're running up the hill. But yeah, I just wanted to give Aaron Stowe a shout out because he's running there in 4th. We really haven't mentioned him, and I have a feeling we're going to see a bit more of him before this race ends.
Now, we might have something interesting going on because I don't see Brian Barnes on track, and it looks like he had an accident. We might have to rewind about 40 seconds or so, and this was at the top of the hill.
Yeah, Brian Barnes is he's taking a tow at this stage, if indeed that is the case, or he's retired, but he's not on track.
Up towards the park, and his car just got away from him, and he went nose on into the concrete barrier, no slowing down, no tire barrier. That was a heavy hit, so he has definitely gotten a tow, and he is going to use up one of his cars if he hasn't already.
Yes, sir. Well, there are 2 battles going on at the moment, or certainly close driving. Paulison and Fletcher are 1. They're about a second apart. And then, of course, we've got Burke and Geringer. Burke went wide going to turn 2 on the previous lap, and that's how Geringer just got by him without any trouble at all. So he'll be doing the chasing now. And, of course, keeping an eye on 3rd and 4th place because they're pretty close as well, Joe.
Indeed, and that would be Fletcher and Paulison. Paulison currently leading as they head up the mountain straight in the black and white Ford Falcon. Fletcher behind him and the Castrol machine as they head over the crest and are working on lap 17 at the moment. So pretty much everybody by now has taken at least 1 stop.
And Joe, just let me cut in there, sorry. Gardner has passed Burke, so Burke must have had another problem because he's just been passed by Joshua Gardner and he falls back yet another position. He was in 6th, now in 8th.
I believe I actually saw Burke letting him by potentially. I'm not entirely sure. I just cut over to it when it happened, but we're still watching Fletcher and Paulson in that battle for 3rd and 4th as they are now at the top of the mountain heading over those fast left-handers with absolutely no runoff, all right up to the wall if you want to hit that lap just right, and now towards Skyline. So with these two guys, it's been another one, Richard, that's been just a little bit back and forth. We've seen these guys relatively close to each other for much of the race, but it seems like it never quite comes together.
Well, you know, these guys are driving extremely well with this very tough car to drive as they come now out of Forest Elbow, heading down Conrod Straight to finish another lap, lap number 17 we are on. Both Fletcher and Paulus and Joe, they've done a great job in this car, just keeping everything steady. They're in 3rd and 4th place, and you know, the guys up front, Sherburne and Rogers, have a bit more pace and they're well ahead. But, you know, it is a long race. I wouldn't be surprised to see that gap close towards the end of this race, Joe.
Now, we can stay on this battle, but just a heads up that Brian Barnes is back on track after getting his car repaired. So, Sam, I'm not sure if you can tell whether or not he has any damage, or did he get a free car out of that?
He got the free car. He's back out on the circuit now. I'm not quite sure where his position is, but the last two of the leaders to pit were our two leaders. Christopher Sherburne just came out of the pits with a handy lead over Matthew Rogers, who has a handy lead over the battle for 3rd between Stephen Paulison and William Fletcher. And I've got to apologise. Last time I came on the broadcast, I said Aaron Stowe was in 3rd place. He is not. He actually did lose those 2 positions to Stephen Paulison and William Fletcher in his stop, so he is in 5th place, but not too far behind him. So like I say, I don't think we've heard of the last of him. Meanwhile, we just had 2 drivers retire officially, David Freeboth and Gary Nichols, and that takes us down to 18 cars. Christopher Sherburne still leading here on lap 18.
And we were watching that replay just a bit ago of Nichols completely missing the chase once again, so must have had enough of this challenge here around Bathurst. Meanwhile, Christopher Sherburne has not had enough of it as he continues to lead, as you said, and doing so quite well. In fact, he's got about a minute gap to Rogers, I'm seeing. So
no, that was because Sherburne just hit. That should recorrect the completion of this lap.
There we go. I was just going to say, I believe he should have pitted by now, so that just didn't seem accurate. Well, as he heads into the chase, now braking for that hard left-hander. He is working his way through yet another lap and has been leading much of this race, since we have to say, Richard, that was a phenomenal start, probably critical for him in this race.
Yes, indeed. And I've been watching Carl Burke and Gardner. They just the car going across the top of the mountain just before heading down. I'll have to check who that was, but certainly Sherburne has done a brilliant job. Matthew Rogers has chased hard, but has not been able to stay with him except in the very, very early laps.
In fact, right now the gap is about 10 seconds between Rogers and Sherburne as we switch over to Rogers and head onto the mountain straight here. So not really close enough to make anything happen, but as we said earlier, the tires are something these drivers have to watch out for, so we don't know if Rogers is taking it easy now to maybe push a little bit later on. We'll have to wait and see as we hop on board with Rogers now and get an idea of what it's like in race conditions around this very narrow and fast and dangerous course.
And Joe, just an update, the car that I mentioned that was in the wall there was indeed Jared Morgan. He is making his way back to pit lane now by the looks of it, going quite slowly, judging by how fast the car in front of him flashed by him. So no doubt we'll see him enter the pits right now.
Let's stay with Matthew Rogers, but Morgan is in fact the last car on track right now. And Drew Lalonde, remember wondering about his problems, if they were legit, if his pace just wasn't that great. And he is second to last on track. Meanwhile, let's stay with Rogers and see what it's like having to try and navigate with lap traffic at the top of the mountain. Not sure. Let's see. That is the car of Mike Willett. Yeah. So let's see if Willett gets out of the way. It looks like he's going to have a good opportunity once they hit Conrad straight. As Willett goes wide, is he going to save it? I thought he had a little bit of a slide there. Holds onto it. And now he's definitely going to have to move over and let these leaders by. There he goes. Nice, polite driving from the back marker of Mike Willett. Sam?
That's a battle for position, though. Right behind him, Carl Murphy blows by Mike Willett for 14th.
So Murphy takes advantage of some unfortunate circumstances for Willett, but I think Willett set that up a bit himself, to be honest. He definitely had a bit of a hairy time heading into Forest Elbow, so that wasn't completely just the fault of Rogers having to try and squeeze his way by. But Murphy doing handy himself. He's sitting in 14th position now that he's taken that away from Mike Willett, who has been demoted to 15th. So out of our 18 cars, 17 cars still on track, because it looks like Morgan has decided he has had enough. Out of our 17 cars, we have Murphy moving himself up one, so he's now 13th actually, Richard.
Yes. No, I'm trying to make up my mind what Kyle Murphy's all about. He's got pace, there is no doubt about it. He's got pace, but he's a lap down, and it surprises me. So, you know, he's not using his pace very well, I think, and having accidents or incidents. And it's a pity, because he could be up there racing with the leaders if he had done the smart thing and kept a cool head in the early laps.
Very much so, and it looks like we got a very interesting message, Sam, on the radio, or text chat rather, of one of the drivers here.
Yeah, Jared
Yes.
Morgan just saying that he's done for the day. He said, he quote unquote, he ran out of talent. I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of talent to get around here. But I'll tell you what's surprising me, Richard. This circuit is 3.86 miles long, and we only got 17 cars. You'd think they wouldn't have to encounter that much traffic, but we're not seeing that at all.
No, indeed. The point is that some of the drivers are so much faster than some others, and we can see that our leader Christopher Sherburne is 15 seconds ahead of Matthew Rogers. Now that might have been during the pit stops, or could have been incidents, but certainly they are not without lack of talent, unlike Jared Morgan, who by his own confession ran out of talent, as you say. But you know, this is quite an interesting race. I'm taking a new look at this car just to see how difficult it is to drive. And gosh, Joe, it is a very difficult car to drive. But if you steady and if you drive within your talent range, I believe you can do well in this car.
Absolutely. Any car that takes a gentle right foot is just going to have a steep learning curve, and just take some time and getting to know its quirks, I'm sure. Well, as we watch a battle slowly brewing between Paulison, Fletcher, and Stowe, we're going to hopefully come back before it starts to erupt, but we're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Mount Panorama as we watch William Fletcher do his best to run down Stephen Paulison. You might notice that Aaron Stowe is missing. If you were watching during the break, you might have caught a flash of his spin in the chase.
Yeah, and he just blew up, Joe.
Woof, that car is smoking worse than a chain smoker smokes right now as we look at the replay. And this looks like it was heading, actually, no, I'm sorry, we're looking at his spin, looks like, instead of his engine blow. And just took a little bit too much curb, and you can see that back end comes right around, Richard.
Yeah, unfortunate for Aaron Stowe. He's now entering the pits, so hopefully he can get himself organized and sorted out there and get back out on track. We don't want to lose another car if that is at all possible.
Now, a driver that was competing for the road championship, Josh Gardner, ran into some trouble. These guys, him and Barnes, are kind of, it's like they don't want to take the championship today.
Yeah, Gardner just pulling into his stall right at the point that Stowe is pulling into his stall. Obviously, Stowe not able to go fast at all. The fortunate thing, as mentioned about Stowe earlier, is that he had an incident-free race up to that point, so should easily be able to get a free repair. I'm not sure about Joshua Gardner. He's been involved in at least one incident earlier. I don't know if he has any free repairs left, so we'll have to see what that car looks like when he comes out of the pits. Meanwhile, Sean Weitzman also had a big crash a couple of laps ago. He was running about 15th, and he is now out of a race, I think. But Joshua Gardner, there you go. His spoiler damage is now fixed. He is leaving the pits, and his car looks as good as new. But I think he's on the edge now. He can't put it in the wall again.
Definitely not, and that repair actually put him down from Brian Barnes, who is sitting in 8th, and you can see Gardner on your screen is scored as 11th, so that, and I just realized that that is a Hulkamania car, I think, actually, as we watch it go by here. Yeah, that is in fact a Hulkamania car. So, very whimsical paint job from Josh Gardner there, but it's certainly not helping him as he's going to lose out now on points to Barnes. He's got to get back ahead of him, and Barnes has actually gotten himself back on the lead lap, interestingly. However, I think we should switch over to the battle for third. Steve Paulison and William Fletcher. Fletcher was very close for a moment coming into Murray's corner, Richard, but it looks like he's backed off a little. Let's see as he closes for braking around Hill.
Yes, he comes very, very close in the braking zone. Obviously, brakes a lot later than does Paulison. But Paulison, with the old slow in, fast out, gets the run as we go up the mountain. Now he's in the draft. He should be able to close up. Now he brakes, heading into Griffin. He decides, no, I will not try anything going into this very, very tough section. They approach the cutting now, where, again, this is not an area that you want to get anywhere near another car. You want to just stay in line and get through the top of the mountain. Maybe try along Skyline, and if you can't get it done there, wait till you come down Conrad. But these guys are very close and have been for quite some time, Joe. It'll be interesting to see if William Fletcher does decide to make the move, because he kind of looks like he wants to do it now.
Yeah, this is a pressure cooker if I've ever seen one between these two guys. We're on board with Fletcher right now as they head over Skyline down towards the Dipper, and you can get a sense of just how blind most of these corners are. So if something's going on up ahead of you, if you've got a spotter, they need to be telling you right away. And boy, Paulison starts to streak away quite a bit up here, and then it seems like Fletcher closes up among some of the other corners such as Murray's and Hell, and you can see once again just starts to lose ground out of Forest. So it seems like his car is not working as well at the top of the mountain as Stephen Paulison as they head down Conrad String, Sam.
Yeah, remember, in about 5 laps we'll begin talking about pit stops again, but Paulison has a nice gap up on Fletcher, and as we were watching that on board, I began to realise the reason I probably don't like this track is because I'm afraid of heights, and this track has a lot of height at the top of that mountain. Here they come through the final corner again, and Fletcher is definitely too far behind to make anything happen. They're coming around to complete lap 24. Fletcher drives in a little bit deep, and I'll hand it back over to you, Joe, as they go to Hell.
Yeah, he seems to close in under braking, so he seems to be much later on the brakes. question is, can he get the better exits? And he does this time, coming through Hell Corner. So he closes up a little once again at the bottom of the mountain. I have to wonder, Sam.
Sorry, Joe. Where's Sherburn? Where's our leader?
He's not on track from what I'm seeing. So something happened to Sherburn. Let's see if we can go back and figure it out. While I'm doing that, and I'm seeing him smoking on my replay. Yeah, we can see him now. He looks as if he blew his engine, and sadly it was right when he went past the pit entry. So poor Christopher Sherburn has to get a tow all the way around the track.
Wow, that's going to take a while. I think it takes about 5 minutes or even 6 minutes to the tow right around this track. So that's unfortunate for Sherburn. He was leading by 18 seconds, and now Matthew Rogers will no doubt, he will attain the #1 position, P1, and he will be about 18 seconds or so ahead of the new #2 in Paulison. This might give Joe some incentive for Fletcher to try and get, well, Fletcher would be on the podium right now already, but to try and get into second position past Stephen Paulison.
Absolutely. We saw on the replay that Sherburn actually put it in the wall. He didn't blow his engine. That was from running into the pit wall, coming out of Murray's corner. So Rogers now, as he comes to the line, is going to be taking over that lead. But we switch to Fletcher, who, as we said, has been hunting down Paulison. And these two are now solidly on to the podium. So it can change in a heartbeat around the mountain. And Sherburn has once again reiterated that. And look at Fletcher actually close drastically up through the chase on the back of Paulison. He really is good on brakes on that car, Sam.
Yeah, meanwhile, Drew Lalonde had a crash, and I suggest he's taking a tow to the pits. But yeah, Matthew Rogers has done well today. They just hang out in second and eventually get the lead. And so now Paulison and Fletcher really need to battle, because if something happens to Rogers, then they will be battling for the lead. And I just want to check points again here. The battle for third in the points. Who was that between? That's between Gardner, Burke and Paulison. So Paulison may not necessarily be as concerned with winning this race if it came down to it, or even beating Fletcher. As long as he just gets a good finish, he should be able to get third in the points.
That's very true. He's only 7 points back from Gardner in third right now. That's overall, mind you. So that's going to be a handy finish for him if he can just stay up there. Now, as we head up to the top of the mountain, that brings me back to one thing that I wanted to ask you a little bit earlier, Sam. That fear of heights happened before or after you jumped off the second story of a building?
Before. The reason I jumped off the second story of a building was because I was scared of heights and I wanted to get it over with, so that's why I jumped instead of climbed down.
Well, seems solid enough logic to me, I guess. Back to the racing once again through the dipper. Fletcher just all over the back of Paulison, and Paulison, as we said, probably going to be fighting for a good finish today. Oh, this is going to be a very critical corner heading through Forest Elbow, but it looks like Paulison has the much better exit as he starts to stretch away from Fletcher, who we ride on board with now. Now, keep in mind, you can see right now that these cars, if you're an American watching, these cars drive on the right-hand side. So if you're not used to that, that can be another thing, Richard, that these guys have to adapt to.
Yes, indeed. Well, they do have a right-hand drive. I want to mention very quickly that Christopher Sherburn has been in the pits. He got a repair. The Bottle of Falcon is back out on track. He's a minute 17 or so down from the leader at this point in time, but with 41.5 minutes still to go in this race, he's in 5th place. He was the fastest guy. He might be able to make up some time, particularly when we do have pit stops, which will have to happen. He will have done his pit stop on lap 26, which is about in the pit window. So he's good to go now for another 14 or 15 laps, Joe.
We're seeing Christopher currently marked as 8th on track, so we'll make sure that's correct, but that's what our timing and scoring is currently showing, which you can see on screen. So Christopher Sherburne has a recovery drive to make. He's been the class of the field for most of this thing, but one little mistake has certainly set him back. Meanwhile, Matthew Rogers, can he hold on to it? He certainly has got the gap with about 19 to 20 seconds between himself and Stephen Paulison. So if he wanted to, he can cruise, but that's a bit of a tough ask in this car. I don't think there's such a mode as cruise for these cars, Sam.
No, there isn't, and also people always go back to Ayrton Senna at Monaco in 1988, where he just began to relax and ended up putting it in the wall. If you're doing well and you're not making mistakes, just keep doing what you're doing, even if it is faster, then you shouldn't make any more mistakes. So Matthew Rogers is leading, got this battle on for second between Stephen Paulison and William Fletcher. Paul Garinger, who we mentioned was having battles around 10th place earlier, is now in 4th, and behind him in 5th place is Brian Barnes, who we know had issues earlier, so really only although I think Brian Barnes may be out sequencing pit cycle, I think really only about the top 4 cars in the race right now have had incident-free races today.
Which seems to be proving quite critical, and we're on board with Paulison, who's still leading Fletcher, just less than a second behind him as they head into, actually I'm trying to figure out which corner this is. That is the chase there that they are heading through. So continuing to lead him on as they are on lap 27, and it sounds like Carl Burke is going to kick off our second set of pit stops here on 27. And I'm trying to understand a message we're getting from Josh Gardner here. But it looks like Gardner, where is he? Remember, he is fighting for the road championship with Brian Barnes, and looks like Gardner still a lap down, sitting in 12th. In fact, a long ways back from Barnes, currently scored in 5th. In fact, Barnes is just heading by the lap car of Brian Bennett right now, so he's going to be able to get himself a bit of clear track and be able to move on from there. Still sitting on board with Paulison because this battle continues on for 3rd, has for just about most of the race, and we've got 38 minutes left unless my eyes deceive me, so we are well past the halfway point. These guys are getting close to the end now.
Yeah, that's correct, Joe, and I've got my eyes on Christopher Sherburne, who is trying to make up a position on Aaron Stowe. He's currently in 8th position. He's very close to Aaron Stowe now. He's cut that lead down by about 2 or 3 seconds just in that one lap. So he's doing pretty well in trying to make a comeback. He's got a heck of a long way to go, unfortunately, to the leaders. But certainly he's now moved up to 7th position. So Ray Nelson has fallen back. He must have gone into pit. But I want to see if he manages to get by Aaron Stowe. He's pretty close right now.
And just to give you an idea of how kind of pace these guys are running, earlier on in the race, the leaders were running 209s, 210s, and then now we're hearing that they're running 213s. So a number of these guys have definitely backed off in hopes of trying to make it to the finish, possibly even to preserve tires.
Well, tires is definitely an issue here. Having said that, Christopher Sherburne on his second lap after pitting with that accident has done a 210, so he's back on pace as you would expect with fresh rubber on the car, and all to fight for, having lost the lead and falling back down to 7th position. So he's got his sights now on Aaron Stowe. That's the first obstacle as they go across Skyline. Let us see if he can negotiate this obstacle and make his way forward. Still a long way to go, but certainly he's not out of it, I would believe.
Yeah, and the reason that this was a battle for 6, Richard, you were talking about Ray Nelson was in front of him and something happened to him. He actually lost the connection, the internet connection. Of course, this is iRacing, this is an online service. We're trying to see if he's got back out on the track yet. I don't think he has, but he has rejoined the service. So that is how Christopher Sherburne and Aaron Stowe got to gain that position. And Christopher certainly looking for 6th place right now. And 15 seconds in front of him will be his next target, Brian Barnes in 5th. Brian, by the way, is pretty much first of the drivers who have had issues today, Joe.
Which is interesting since it's this far into the race. Usually we see one or two guys somewhere along the way have some trouble. Meanwhile, we're still watching Sherburne, who's not making the progress that I would have expected to get past Stowe. Stowe is certainly not just pulling over and letting him by, knowing that he's going to want that top 6 position. And I'm also keeping half an eye, and we can stay on this battle, I'm keeping half an eye on William Fletcher and Steve Paulison, who continue to stay very close. But right now, I think Sherburne's probably the most likely to be making a move soon, trying to run down the car of Aaron Stowe and that blue and black Falcon just ahead of him.
Fletcher's wrecked.
In fact, that happened in Forest Elbow, one of the most difficult corners. We're going to watch the replay heading into the braking. Tail just starts to come out, and that is it usually, as he plows it into that wall on the outside. And Richard, even the best drivers in the world have messed up that corner before.
Look, one of the veterans of supercar racing, Dick Johnson, many years ago hit that Forest Elbow wall and plunged halfway down the mountain, or when they didn't have all those safety barriers. And you know, this has now happened to William Fletcher. He's managing to make his way into the pits. The damage is not excessive, so let's hope he can get it repaired, get back out there. But third position, looking in danger now.
Yeah, in fact, he's got Paul Geringer right behind him. He's caught up that time that it was a very big gap before. I want to say roughly 20 seconds, it looks like, before he had that contact with the wall. So Fletcher has lost a significant amount of time. The one thing, though, is I believe he should have a spare car unless he had any contact earlier on. And boy, Sam, you were talking, or I think it was you that was talking about...
Back to Sherburne. These guys are battling hard now.
And we can see them on screen heading through the chase, but not much for him, although he gets a very good exit. You might have a look down into Murray's corner. Sherburne is only a couple car lengths behind. It's going to have to be a late dive as Stowe goes defensive. No, he doesn't. He actually lets him by. He knows that this is a battle he probably won't win with a car that has led most of the race, and lets him on through. So one more position for Sherburne to get him into the top 5 now. But I was going to say, Sam, I think it was you mentioned earlier as we watched Geringer also trying to battle with the car of Fletcher, that the top 4 were the cars that had managed to stay out of trouble, and another monkey falls off the bed, I suppose.
Yeah, 10 bottles of beer on the wall and take one down, but yeah, the other thing about this battle between Fletcher and Geringer is it's not happening too far in front of Christopher Sherburne. Once he gets by the lap car of Brian Bennett, he will be right behind him, albeit about 5 seconds back on the road. And while all that's going on, I'm pretty sure he's off on pit cycle, but this has actually moved Brian Barnes back up into 3rd position.
So Barnes making forward progress. Remember, Barnes actually qualified in 5th, so if he manages to stay here, he's back up to his starting position where his pace seems to indicate. So Barnes obviously not having a bad race as we continue to watch this battle between Geringer and Fletcher, 4th and 5th. And we'll see if, and it looks like Sherburne still has managed not to get by the lapped car of Bennett, because they are up on the mountain, so there's really not many opportunities for him to pull over and let him by. Now they're finally getting to the Conrad straight, and he goes wide and lets Sherburne on through. So now Sherburne is free to try and run his pace and run these guys down.
Well, you know, I've been watching Geringer and Fletcher as well. These guys there's certainly a battle on here for the 3rd place position. That's the first podium position. Currently, Matthew Rogers is in the lead with Brian Barnes behind him, and then these two battling it out. At the moment, Geringer is not anywhere close enough to make any challenge. But these guys have been in their own way. They've been battling very hard. If Geringer gets a little closer, we will see the battle on, or you know, for that 3rd position. But currently, not yet in the battle situation. Meanwhile, Sherburne slowly making his way forward, but he's got a long haul now to get to those other two, Geringer and Fletcher. Joe.
In fact, we're seeing Brian Barnes scored in second because Stephen Paulison has taken his pit. So even though this might be a little bit off because of pit cycles, Barnes has already worked himself into second place, although he will, I expect, to be slotted down once he comes in. So Barnes having an incredible comeback after a hard hit earlier on in the race, definitely setting him back. That popsicle machine now heading down into the dipper at the top of the mountain. So
yeah,
yes, that's right.
I think what we can't forget here, well, there's two ways this is going to play out. Either Brian Barnes has to make the same amount of scheduled pit stops as everyone else, which I don't think he does, as he almost loses it at the bottom of a hill there, or he has to make an extra pit stop compared to everyone else. And the significant thing there is that Steve Paulison, who pitted last time around, came out in third place, but once Barnes pits, if Barnes has to pit, that will move Paulison up to second. So, in other words, Paulison is really in the catbird seat right now. If anything was to happen to Rogers, he would be looking at maybe even the winner's trophy.
Well,
Joe, can I just jump in here? I think the pit stop issue, Matthew Rogers is showing in the timing scores only having done one pit stop. So he's off the cycle here. He will have to go into the pits very, very soon and go and lose that first position. So Brian Barnes is now approaching the pits there, so you were quite right about that, Samuel. And Steve Paulison very soon will inherit the lead of this race, if I'm not mistaken.
Also, we just saw Fletcher head into the pits after a battle with Geringer. He seemed to have gotten by, so Fletcher now taking what looks like his final stop.
I think you're right, Richard, in that as Barnes is in the pits, in that Matthew Rogers does still have another stop to make and Steve Paulison does not. However, Steve Paulison is so far back of Matthew Rogers that Rogers should be able to pit and come back out in the lead.
Yeah, quite correct. He's more than a minute ahead of him. He should still be able to come back out in the lead, but stranger things have happened. You know, yesterday in real life, the leader of the race went into the pits for his scheduled pit stop and could not make it back out again. The car just would not start. That will not happen in iRacing, but other things could happen. So we keep our fingers crossed that nothing happens to him, as we see Rogers going into the pits right now.
Absolutely. Rogers taking what should be his final stop with 28 minutes left on the clock. And keep in mind with Brian Barnes, he must have been very tight on it with his altered pit stop schedule, because he was asking over the radio how much time is left on the clock. And they informed him that 30 minutes would just should be about the limit for these cars. So he should make it to the end. Currently showing scored in 6th at the moment.
Well, just watching Brian Barnes coming across the mountain right now. So he's a long way from pit lane where Matthew Rogers is. So he's not going to make it anywhere close to him. But I'll be very interested to see what exactly the gap is when indeed he passes the line, Joe.
Well, don't forget we've got Paulison, and Rogers actually heads out of his pit stall right now, and is back onto the track at about the time that Paulison is heading towards Murray Corner. And looks like it's going to be quite a gap between those two once he crosses the line. Paulison currently sitting the best, I think. And I'm trying to remember, has Paulison pitted recently? He is showing 2 pit stops.
Yes, they've both done their 2 pit stops, so should be able to get out to the end. Although, what I really need to know is when did Steve Paulison pit? Maybe he can't make it to the end. We shall have to wait and see. But right now, the gap is still over a minute. So at this point in time, Matthew Rogers very, very safely in the first position, Joe.
We're seeing it's about 20 seconds on track. We'll have to apologize because sometimes the timing of scoring is a little bit hard to read since it goes by the start-finish line for these cars. When pit stops happen, it gets a little difficult to be able to tell gaps. And we can see that there's a pass on track between Bennett and Stowe as Bennett moves himself up into the... Let's see, I actually can't tell what position he's moved himself into. Sounds like 10th position, actually. So Bennett has been making himself up positions, I believe, because he was a lap down for many cars.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
also
that's true.
Stowe has been struggling a little bit. Quite a few other leaders have been struggling a bit through this last sequence of pit stops. I believe William Fletcher had 2 stops, and Stowe looks like he has a lot of damage. And as a result of all of that, Christopher Sherburn is back up into 4th position, Richard.
Yeah, Christopher Sherburn, he's driving the wheels off his bottle of Falcon there, trying to make up as much, trying to make up as much time on the guys in front of him as possible. But I am just trying to get a sense of what exactly is going on here, because Matthew Rogers still firmly in 1st place. Stephen Paulison in the 2nd place, coming down towards Murray's now, so he's not that far back. The timing and scoring, Joe, will catch up when they pass the line right now. We really need to get that fixed, and I will get that fixed for us before we go into the next season.
Richard, of course, being a resident software expert around here, does a lot of handy work. The gap I'm interested in looking at, you mentioned Sherburn being in 4th. Paul Geringer is only 3 seconds now. I believe it was 5 seconds last time by. So Sherburn, actually 6 seconds, I believe, before.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here, Joe, and this is a tip of the hat to Paul Geringer, is I think honestly he is a middle of the field a middle of a pack car when we started this race. He was about 7th to 10th place car, but really he is one of the only drivers who hasn't put a scratch on that Falcon today, knock on wood, and that is how he's been able to get up to 3rd. Unfortunately, that means I think he's a bit of a sitting duck for Sherburn, but still, tip of the hat to Geringer for being in a podium position this close to the end of a race.
Absolutely, and if you think it's hard trying to put these corners in order, try putting words in order when you're talking on air. But right now, the drivers are continuing to try to put these laps down as Geringer is being hunted down by the former leader of Christopher Sherburn. The number 135 Bottle-O machine is closing in across the top of the mountain. I expect with 23 minutes left to go, he should be able to nab that last podium spot before it's out. And then he's got another 7 seconds up the road once he does that to try and get past Steve Paulison if he can and work into 2nd. But Matthew Rogers, class of the field, almost flawless during this race, as you said, knock on wood, with an 18-second lead at the moment.
And you know what, Joe? Pleasing actually for me. Matthew Rogers is from the Northwest Club, obviously. Is he an American? I do believe that is the case. Very good to see that somebody from Northwest on his car. I mean, all of these guys driving for the Northwest Club, but they're not necessarily all from around that area. But Matthew Rogers certainly is, and he's leading this race. A great run from him. The other person that I would love to see move up forward, and I think it might happen in the last 20 minutes, Joe, is Sherburn, because he is catching a mistake. Oh, he's in 3rd place. What happened to Geringer?
He's in the pits, Richard.
Dear, oh dear, Geringer coming into the pits there, Joe. So he's done 2 pit stops, so I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Well, we got a lot of cars on pit road with damage. Aaron Stowe and Brian Bennett and Joshua Gardiner. Joshua Gardiner just reported he's got 8 minutes of free repairs, so he's actually listening to our broadcast right now. Hi, Josh.
Maybe we'll have to see if we can pull him into the booth. I'm not sure if he's around to try and talk to while he waits for that to get repaired. Talk about his race and championship run. His current rival that he has been trying to compete against has a handy little gap on him with all those repairs. That's Brian Barnes sitting in 5th. You can see him, or actually I'm seeing 4th. So it's with Geringer's pit. So Brian Barnes in the top 4, potentially a podium, but Sherburn's pretty far up the road from Barnes, so maybe not potentially a podium. He's going to have to hope for some trouble from cars in front to get any more spots along the way. Barnes is done with his pit stop. We'll have to see if anybody else is trying to work their way to the line with whatever fuel they've got. As Barnes works his way up through Frog Hollow now. So our top 5 in order: Matthew Rogers sitting in 1st, Steve Paulison 19 seconds back in 2nd, Sherburn is in third, trying to run him down about 10 more seconds back up the field. Brian Barnes is sitting in fifth, and then Carl Berg has worked his way back into the top 5.
And I'm watching Christopher Sherburn run that bottle of. He's running the wheels of that bottle of car. He had a huge bobble coming across the mountain there, which goes to show how hard he's pushing. He comes now through the chase area. He is not that far behind Stephen Paulison, getting up towards him. As you see in the distance there's a lap car in between and then Stephen Paulison. So he can see him at this point on the longer stretches. You'll see him certainly going up Mountain Straight as well, Joe. So he's got all the incentive to keep that car moving as hard as he can.
Absolutely, and it's looking about 7 seconds between them now as we hop on board with Sherburn. With 20 minutes left to go, he does have some time to try and catch him. I'd hate to be under the helmet of Sherburn's car right now, just because it's really so much a question of what could have been. He was dominating this race. He's already running down after that heavy enough accident that it damages his engine, that he's already worked back up to third, looking at a potential second. This guy could have absolutely run away with this thing, Richard.
Oh, yes, indeed, as I was just having a look around some of the other areas, but back to Mr. Sherburn, doing a great job in piloting that car. And let's face it, these things are like aeroplanes on wheels. They're that fast. So, you know, in real life, they get up to 300 kilometers an hour. That is over 200 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. So that is fast. As we see him coming up to the lap car now, so he should be able to dispense with the lap car pretty quickly and get on with the job, Joe, of trying to catch Paulison.
They can reach roughly 180 miles an hour by the time they reach the chase. These cars. But Sherburn is not going to reach that this time, probably, as he has a very bad exit coming out of Forest Elbow. But definitely incredibly fast for touring cars, essentially. Very fast touring cars, but still, these are based off real cars that you and I could drive on the road, however heavily modified. Taking a nice bit of curb, Sherburn coming into the chase. That is a gutsy move, and as you said, pointing out just how hard he is pushing that car, and he has closed the gap once again on Stephen Paulison, who is heading to the line right now. We're going to get an update on that gap as they come across to get into lap 37. Where is Sherburn this time by? It looks like it's now down to 5 seconds between himself and Paulison, about a second faster per lap.
And with 18 minutes to go, 18 seconds, he has certainly got enough time to catch up to Paulison if there's only 5 seconds of gap. Paulison, however, we must not discount. He's not in second place by accident, or maybe he's in there by accident, other people's accidents. But nonetheless, he will be aware that he's being chased down, and he might respond as well. This is starting to, as always, Joe, to become exciting as we get close to the end.
Very much so, and you know, as much as drivers say they don't wish ill on other drivers and want to have a good battle, I almost guarantee you that every one of these guys will be happy to take a position when someone ahead of them wrecks, Sam.
Yeah, 2 laps ago, Stephen Paulison ran a 2:13 to Christopher Sherburn's 2:10, and then last lap, Stephen Paulison ran a 2:12 to Christopher's 2:10. So Christopher has taken 5 seconds out of Paulison's battle for second, so he should be able to catch Paulison within a couple of laps. However, catching Matthew Rogers is going to be an entirely different thing in itself. Meanwhile, let's mention there are 6 cars currently still on the lead lap, and the other 2 we haven't really talked about a whole lot are Carl Berg in 5th and Wayne Hutchinson in 6th. Really haven't mentioned Wayne at all in the Castrol Max number 15 Ford Falcon. He's done a nice job today and actually isn't too far back of Carl Berg in the battle for 5th, so I'll keep an eye on that as well.
Absolutely, and we should mention that Hutchinson is the last car on the lead lap.
Oh, sorry, Sherburn goes wide coming out through the chase there, was catching so well, and then that's put him back a couple of seconds, maybe 3 or 4 seconds right there.
We're going to watch the replay, and this is another easy mistake to make. As we said, you're coming in extremely hot into that corner and trying to hit your brake mark. All it takes is just a fraction of a second too late, and as you can see, he just slides off into the grass. No harm done except for lost time, maybe a bit of a bruised ego. Now up to 6 seconds between Sherburne and Paulison, so he's got to make up that time that he's lost. But we said that Sherburne is on a tear, so it's not out of the question for him to try and make that back up. Now switch back to Hutchinson, still sitting in 6th, and definitely not too far back from Carl Burke. So all it will take is just a slight mistake from Burke, and Hutchinson could work his way, Sam, into the top 5.
He could, so keep an eye on the times on that. But yeah, I don't think Sherburne's got too much to worry about. We've still got about 20 minutes left of this race to go. And he knows he's not going to catch Matthew Rogers. I have a feeling he's still got the pace to beat Paulison. He just needs to make sure he doesn't make another mistake like that again. Right now they have a lap car of Ray Nelson, who had the blown engine early, I believe. He's running 10th place. He's 2 laps down, running in between them right now.
Currently just past the 15-minute mark, so 15 minutes left on the clock at the moment as we watch Ray work his way around the track. Been a decent race for him despite having some connection problems earlier on. Top 10 will still be a little handy little finish for Ray, and that I believe that's a Napa machine, if I'm seeing correctly. A popsicle machine, actually, excuse me. So that popsicle Ford Falcon working its way down Conrad straight towards the chase to complete another lap, albeit 2 laps down from our leader Matthew Rogers, who has a 22-second lead currently as we cross the line.
And Joe, I'll jump in here and just mention that 4 guys were in the pits, a whole bunch of them approaching the pits, so it's starting to dawn on me that maybe, just maybe, Rogers and Paulison and Sherburne, well, maybe not Sherburne, but certainly Rogers and Paulison may need to pit again.
And actually, I'm going to try and see if we can figure out what the bogey time is on that pit lane, because if Paulison doesn't come in, then Rogers has to count on being able to get back out within 23 seconds. As we said, about 13 and a half minutes left on the clock, so he is getting down towards the end. We're watching Sherburne, who I believe should be able to make it to the end, and now has 4 seconds between himself and Paulison, having cut down that gap. You can see he just put the car of Ray Nelson another lap down. As he works his way back up the mountain, he can just catch glimpses of Paulison around the corners, but now as they get between these very tight barriers, he's going to lose sight, and then he won't probably see him again until he gets towards the Conrad Straight.
And Brian Barnes was crabbing throughout the rest of the lap. He wrecked from 4th position early on last lap and has just came into his pit road.
Oh, after such a great recovery, as we watch Behringer try to work on Chris Beck for that 8th position. It's sad to see that another one has set him back. That last mistake before really hurt him, and this one's going to hurt him yet again, although he doesn't have to worry about Gardner. Now heading around Forest Elbow. Let's see what Gehringer has for Beck, and just does not get the exit he wants as Beck starts to stretch it out in that orange and black Falcon and work his way away from Gehringer.
And Sherburne is right on the, well, not right on the bumper, but he is within sight. He has cut that lead down massively from Paulison. And as they go down Conrad now, you can see he can see Paulison right ahead of him. But coming across the mountain, Sherburne just cut 1 or 2 seconds off as they come through the chase now. He's right behind him, so to speak. And going down to Murray's, we shall see that lead of Paulison is cut back even further. We have a battle on, but he has to pit. He comes into the pits right now, and that's the battle over for now.
So Sherburne wasn't able to make it to the end, just 11 minutes shy. We also, I'm not sure if we saw it on screen, but Mike Willett unfortunately had an off, and Sherburne is expressing his displeasure with his fuel as he comes on in. We're looking at a replay right now, and it looks like this is Mike Willett coming up to Murray's corner, where he just ran a little bit wide and unfortunately made friends with the Armco.
And in one lap, Wayne Hutchinson goes, well, as a matter of fact, in a matter of 2 turns, Wayne Hutchinson goes from 6th to 4th place as Carl Burke spins out of the final corner on the previous lap and falls behind him. And of course, Brian Barnes was in the pits with damage. So Wayne Hutchinson now up to 4th place in that number 15 Falcon.
Wow, how things can change around the mountain in just a moment's time. I know we keep saying it, but you can see it's so true, even with only 100 minutes of racing for these guys. And Geringer's car is certainly not looking too handy itself, even though he was catching up to Beck. So Paulison now should be able to hold on to that 2nd position and not have to worry, as long as he also doesn't have to stop for fuel. We also don't know about Rogers. Has a 24-second gap between himself and Paulison. He has 10 more minutes left to go. Can he stretch the fuel that far? Meanwhile, as Brian Barnes continues to sit in his stall, Wayne Hutchinson, the story of the day, moving up to 4th. And, should be moving up to 3rd, I believe, actually. Should he?
Well, he's on lap 39 at the moment. He's got to cross the line first. Christopher Sherburn's in 3rd place. Wayne Hutchinson still in 4th. Carl Burke currently in 5th place according to timing and scoring. But the man on the chart, Christopher Sherburn, he's not out of this, I don't believe, Joe. I think that if the other 2 guys have to stop in front of him, he has a chance, a slim chance. But he could head for that 1st position. He's fighting hard and coming down Conrad Straight. You can see the attitude of the car. He's pushing it as hard as he can. Has he got enough time left? That is the question.
We'll find out in about 9 minutes whether or not he can get these guys on fuel. And right now, Matthew Rogers is heading up towards the cutting himself, it looks like, as he works his way back up the mountain. So he's got a whole nother lap to come back around. Stephen Paulison also getting ready to hit Griffin's Bend, so he has to go another lap if he's getting short on fuel. Meanwhile, we're watching Chris Beck currently sitting in the 7th position. And in fact, he is still in that close battle with Geringer just behind him. And just ahead, they've also got William Fletcher. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, all very close on track in the dying stages of this race.
And the time to make your move is now. Let's face it, Geringer at the moment in 8th position, sitting behind these guys. As they come across Skyline and they break for Skyline, he's right on the back bumper of the car in front of him, which is Chris Beck, no doubt, and William Fletcher just in front of him. So battle is on here for position without a doubt, and these 3 bear watching, Joe, because certainly they're going to fight as hard as they can to get that extra position.
And this is what William Fletcher wants right now, is for Beck to get caught by Geringer, to give him just that little bit of breathing space. We've been watching this back and forth a little bit with Geringer working on Beck. Hasn't been able to make good ground. Now they head towards the chase. Let's see if he can close under braking here, Sam.
While that's going on, I'll give a mention that Brian Barnes has just left the pit, but his car is still crabbing pretty bad. We'll keep an eye on this battle right now with William
Battle is
Fletcher,
on
and
from
here
Geringer.
it goes. Chris
Battle
Beck
on
makes
from
a mistake, and
Geringer trying on
looking
the
down
inside. He decides to slot back in line, but both of them catching up to Carl Beck in front of, William Fletcher in front of them. So this is the battle. Geringer has trying to pass Chris Beck, and he's right on the back bumper, and of course Chris Beck is not that far behind William Fletcher. Battle is on, game on, as they say, as he goes to the inside, the outside, trying to make a move on Carl Beck, but Carl Beck goes defensive, Joe.
Yeah, he's got the draft. He's trying to reel him in up over the crest, down into the braking from Griffin's Bend, and he just runs out of steam. He had such a good launch coming out of Hell Corner as Chris Beck just slightly missed the apex and couldn't make anything out of it. Sadly, he's going to get another opportunity later on. And like I said, William Fletcher is hoping these guys will continue to try and fight it out, although he hasn't really stretched away all that much. Now heading back up the mountain, Geringer still right on the tail of Beck, heading up towards the hollow end. Beck runs into the wall.
Beck went wide there and unfortunately loses that position to Geringer. Great pressure from Geringer on Beck to make him, force him into that mistake there, Joe.
It's miles that you have to travel for the race, but it's inches that matter around this track, as Chris Beck has discovered, and gives away that 7th position to Gehringer. Now Gehringer is looking to run down William Fletcher. No time lost, still right behind that Castrol machine as they head towards Forest Elbow. They've got 6 minutes left on the clock.
And he gets a good launch out of Forest Elbow there. He should be able to catch the draft of William Fletcher and be right on him by the time they come through the chase. Let's see what happens here. Very exciting racing in the closing stages right here.
Now down to the braking zone of the chase through that fast right kink. Paul Gehringer following him in. And it looks like he closed just ever so slightly. No, not just slightly. He definitely gained a lot of ground in the braking zone. Now coming up towards Murray's Corner as Fletcher is using every inch of track he can with that outside curb. Once again, under braking, Paul Gehringer looking like the better car. Onto the front straight now. Is he going to be able to get himself a good launch coming out of Hell Corner? Are we going to see a repeat of last lap where he is oh so close? He takes a little bit of a look up to the inside, but nothing doing. Both of them looking very tidy through that corner. Gehringer once again closing in by 1/2 tenth at a time. Now he's got the draft. Go ahead, Richard.
And Fletcher went defensive there. Now he crosses to the normal side of the track, getting ready to go into Griffin. But Gehringer right behind him at this point in time. And Gehringer gets a great run out of Griffin there as they approach the cutting. He won't try anything through here unless he's completely crazy. But certainly he's right. He'll wait his turn going into Conrad once again as they come across the mountain. Let's see. Looks like Fletcher has gained a little bit of a gap again on Gehringer. But he's sitting back there just biding his time, figuring out where he's going to make a move, and make a move he will, no doubt, Joe.
Gehringer made a little bit of a mistake through the cutting that cost him some time. As we've seen, he closes in under the heavy braking zones quite handily. Now that they're heading towards the downhill portion of the circuit, you can see him closing in on the back of that Castrol Falcon. Now heading through the S's towards Forest Elbow. Gonna have to focus on the exit here for Paul Gehringer. Can he hit that apex clean? He's just slightly off. It's a decent corner, but just not enough to get him into the draft of William Fletcher as now they power their way down the Conrad Straight.
And we are getting information from our director that Sherman has done the fastest lap certainly of recent times here, and is a 2:09.5 as we see Wayne Hutchinson approaching the pits. So he's going into the pits right now, running out of fuel, no doubt. Christopher Sherman is a man on a mission, but he doesn't have enough time to make up any more positions, I don't believe, unless the two in front of him have to pit, Joe. But certainly a man hot on the charge.
And we're getting an update that was even more impressive. It was an 8.8, so almost a qualifying lap, better than some of these guys' qualifying lap. And I heard him over the radio, Sherburne, saying he almost binned it up on the top of the mountain last lap. He was pushing so hard. Meanwhile, pushing not hard enough, Paul Gehringer, or maybe pushing too hard, starts to lose ground from Fletcher as he starts to stretch away, heading back up the mountain straight and over the crest. He's got some breathing room this time.
And we've been holding the broadcast, you and me, Joe. Maybe it's time to hear a word from Sam. Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, I've been watching the battle as well. I did see Sherburne's incident up in the mountain area. He just got a bit of understeer through one of the turns and side-slapped the wall a little bit. Doesn't look like it's affected him too much. And that 2:08.8 that you mentioned, Joe, was ran by Brian Barnes early on the race. So yeah, I think what Sherburne is counting on is that Wallason has to make another stop. They've been talking back and forth a lot on the radio. I confess I haven't heard what they said, so it will be interesting as we are getting into the final couple of laps here, I believe.
In fact, we are under 2 minutes to go. Still on board with Gehringer trying to hunt down Fletcher. That 6th position now down into the dipper as he closes in through this slow portion. Has a bit of a hairy moment there.
Well, Gehringer, the battle is still on there. I'm going to be looking at Matthew Rogers. He should get the white flag on this time by, Joe. So he looks like he might be okay on fuel to finish this race on what he has right now. We shall see as he comes towards the pits. Will he have to pit, or does he have enough fuel to finish? Let's find out in a matter of seconds. We will find out as he passes a slower car. He passes the pit. He should be getting the white flag. I would believe there's only less than a minute left. He doesn't get the white flag yet, so another lap for him to go round, Joe.
This should be the white flag lap with 40 seconds left on the clock. He's taking these corners very slowly, I'm noticing. At least it seems from my point of view. So I wonder if Matthew Rogers is trying to save fuel at the last second. He could still run out before this thing is over.
Off track, Ranger, off track.
He is. In fact, he stopped off track. This is curious. He didn't hit anything.
I think he may have run out of fuel, guys, because Chris just came into the pits, even though he would have been getting the white flag. There's a lot going on right now. I have a feeling we're going to see some cars running out of fuel on the final lap. Joshua Gardner has also put it on in the wall on the final lap. He's pointing backwards. So there's a lot going on right now. Aaron Stowe blew his motor, so that's the story there. But yeah, Chris Beck just said, I'm not going to make the end of this race. I'm going to pit now.
Wow.
Well, there's no time left, Joe. Absolutely no time left, but still seeing a green flag, so that can't be right.
We do have a white flag. We've got the graphic on our screen. It is official. This is the last lap, and I'm watching Rogers. I'm pretty sure that he is going as slow as he can down this hill, trying to coast and see if he can stretch it to the end. He has last time by, he had a 21-second gap between himself and Paulison. So he has some space to try and take it easy, but he can't run out because there is still a little bit of an uphill in a couple spaces. So he's got to try and make sure and squeeze this thing to the end as he slowly works his way to those checkered flags with the white flag out.
Well, he's certainly put his foot on the gas going behind Conrad there, trying to get as much speed up as possible. But there is a slight uphill section that he has to brake for. There's also a slower car in front of him, which he passes successfully. And he is now in the final few turns. Back to you, Joe.
That was the lapped car, Brian Barnes, that he was working his way by. One more corner for Matthew Rogers, and the final round belongs to him in the Northwest Majors. Murray Corner is the only thing separating him. Matthew Rogers manages to come home for the win in round 12 of the Northwest Majors at Bathurst.
And behind him, Brian Barnes finishes and picks up a championship, Richard.
And Stephen Paulison also now coming towards Murray's Corner. He will finish in second place, Joe. So a great run from these guys with 2 stops. Christopher Sherburne, he's coming towards Murray's as well. So he didn't have enough. Great drive from him in that last stint there, Joe.
And with that, Paulison could be moving himself up to 3rd in the championship. Sherburne comes across the line in that recovery drive to take 3rd, and Carl Berg, just to give you an idea of the gap, last car on the lead lap, 2 minutes and 12 seconds back last time by from... Actually, we're seeing he's a lap down, so he may have finished the race already here. So everybody has finished. Only our podium on the lead lap after 100 minutes, the difficulty of this long 4-mile circuit. We are going to go to break. We'll come back with some interviews, hopefully with our championship winners. Stick around because it isn't over yet. Well, after 100 minutes around Mount Panorama, the final round of the Northwest Majors is over. The championship has ended for this season, and Matthew Rogers came out on top in this race, although Brian Barnes won the championship in the road and the overall. In second in the race was Stephen Paulison. Christopher Sherburne made a recovery drive to get onto the podium in the third. Carl Burke came home in fourth, followed by William Fletcher in fifth. Wayne Hutchinson managed to come home in sixth with Chris Beck in seventh, Paul Geringer in eighth, Ray Nelson in ninth, and Kyle G. Murphy, Sam, rounds out the top 10.
Yes, and then in 11th place was Brian Barnes, our championship winner. Our league organizer, Mike Willett, got 12th place. Aaron Stowe got 13th when he blew up with a couple of laps left to go. Joshua Gardiner, 14th place, and Brian Burnett rounds out the top 15. These are all drivers that had difficulty today. Drew Lalonde in 16th place, Sean Breitsman in 17th, Jared Morgan in 18th, Gary Nichols in 19th, David Freeboth rounds out the top 20. And then the three cars that didn't start today were Matthew Sabowski, Corey Peters, who was meant to be the pole sitter, and John Richard.
We have a few drivers to interview from the race. First up is going to be Matthew Rogers, and as we said, Rogers was our winner today. It seemed like it was a case of slow but steady wins the race, even though you had great pace out there. The key seemed to be that you had the right pit strategy and kept it out of the wall.
Oh yeah, thanks. No, that was an exciting race. It didn't matter what I was doing. I was definitely working it, just trying to stay safe. That was the number one key point.
It certainly looked difficult out there. I heard you and Sherburne talking after the race because I believe early on you and he had some contact coming down the Conrod.
Yeah, there was an incident where I saw him kind of lose it and he slowed up, so I snuck in there and I managed to get past him, but I wasn't sure if I was going to hold it or not, so I figured he was going to be coming soon. And once we were there, I was just a little bit loose, and I think I wiggled in his way. I was muted, so I don't know what he had to say, if he did, but I just kept going.
I think, if I recall right, he just apologized for losing it over the radio, so I think it was no harm, no foul. Either way, do you think, do you run this car regularly? And if not, do you fancy maybe making it a regular car for you?
Something about these big heavy cars is fun. I'm not a good road racer to speak of, but something like this definitely boosts your confidence. I have to thank William Fletcher for the setup. He really had a lot of sharing before our official practice, and I really benefited from that myself. I have to thank him a lot.
That is some incredible humility, because having just won after 100 minutes in one of these cars is no mean feat. So I think you can count yourself a not bad road racer from now on. But excellent job. Congratulations on the win, Matt.
Thank you very much. I look forward to another season if we're going to have one. I haven't heard anything. Yeah, if I'm around, I'll be there full season next time.
Great stuff. Up next, we have our third place finisher. That is Chris Sherburne, and I believe Richard is going to talk to him.
Thank you, Joe. Christopher Sherburne, what a race from you, particularly in that final stint. You looked like you were on a mission. You came back from pretty far back. I think you were down to about 8th or 9th place in that last stint there. But tell us about what happened early on when you were leading this race.
I think I was taking a look at the fuel or something, a little bit distracted coming off that last corner, and the back end kind of broke into a nice slow spin and tapped the wall just hard enough, and it pretty much wrecked the motor. Had to get a tow back pits. Getting.
Yeah, but we take a hats off to you on that comeback run to come back into third place. And if the two in front of you had to stop for fuel, you may well have been in first place again. Were you hopeful that they had to stop for fuel, because it ended up with you having to stop for fuel?
Yeah, well, if my little whoopee coming out of the last corner had happened 2-3 laps later, I would have been able to make it to the end, but I was just looking, I was noticing I was about lap short, so I was like, crap. So brought it in early, threw tires on it for a Hail Mary run, and waited to see what happened.
Well, Christopher, look, third place after 100 minutes of racing, that is not a bad position to finish in. So congratulations on that podium position. You were at the end about 34 seconds back. So considering that you started from about, on your comeback, from about at least over a minute, that's pretty good racing. Are you happy with that? I mean, you would have liked to be won, obviously. But having had to come back, are you happy with the third place?
Oh man, honestly, I'm cold. I would have been thrilled with a top 10. I was figuring I'd bounce it off the wall a couple more times, and my race pace was actually was probably a good second to two faster than what I was expecting, but flowed well. Yeah, thrilled. I wouldn't have expected this.
Well, we will say congratulations once again, and thank you for speaking to us. Back to you, Joe.
Last one that we need to talk to is Brian Barnes, championship winner on both the roadside and the overall, and Sam is going to ask him a couple questions.
Brian, first of all, congratulations on your championship.
Thanks, Samuel.
Second of all, a bit of commiserations on the race. You got involved in two incidents at the same turn, one at the start of a race on new tyres and one at the end of a race on old tyres. Have something against that corner?
I just want a reprieve, man. We got to have this thing on the schedule for next year because that was a blast. I was doing all right, but until I missed my braking point on that last one, kind of ruined the car. The first one was cold tires coming out of the pits, and I got on the throttle a little too hard.
Yeah, well, you're still able to persevere to 11th, but considering you were in third with about 6 laps to go, I can't imagine you're too pleased with that, but you still got the championship.
Yeah, thanks. This has been a great season. I've got to thank Mike for putting it on because it's been a blast, and you guys broadcasting it, that's made it all the more better.
Alright, now since you're our championship winner, I guess I'll give you the privilege of answering this question. What do you think has been the strongest thing about the series this season, and what improvements could you see going forward next season?
Back and look over the season and see what I mean. They were all good races. There's the only thing I'd like to change is more or less disconnects. I had way too many during this season.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you still won the championship, so Brian Barnes won, computer nil. Oh, congratulations, Brian, and we look forward to seeing you back next year.
Oh yeah, thanks guys.
Well, the other one that we look forward to seeing back next year would be Mike Willett, who we have to thank for organizing this league. Does a lot of work, and I have heard some of the plans. I don't want to say anything unless I make it premature, but I can tell you that I am quite excited about what could be included next year. Also, we want to thank iRacing.com, XSplit, Twitch TV, Audio Technica, Behringer, and AverMedia, the software and hardware we use to make these broadcasts possible. Thanks to the team today, Sam, Kevin, and Richard. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, you can find it at www.globalsimracingchannel.com, along with archived races and race highlights. We're also on Twitter at GSR Channel and Facebook at /GlobalSimRacingChannel. Thanks goes out to Dougie Beard, who creates all the camera sets for the Global Sim Racing channel, and a special thank you to Eric Ekholm, whose music is not only found here on GSRC, but in TV commercials, movie trailers, iTunes, and Spotify. If you like our music, tell Eric where you heard it on Twitter at Eric Ekholm. Additional thanks to Casey Lalonde, who also provides us with the music for our broadcast. You can find more of his music at caseylalonde.bandcamp.com, including his latest album released just this week called Floating Rooms. It's on sale for $10. Until next time, race clean, Race hard, and I'll see you on the track.